Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.
Hello, Avaya family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of Avaya University. Avaya is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Eileen McKusick, is back with us today to talk about sound therapy and recovery from PTSD. Eileen is a pioneer in the fields of the human biofield, therapeutic sound, and electric health. A researcher, best-selling author, inventor, educator, speaker, and practitioner, Eileen has been researching health since 1987 and specifically how sound impacts health since 1996. She is the originator of the sound therapy method called biofield tuning, with thousands of students trained worldwide since 2010, and the founder of the Biofield Tuning Institute, which conducts grant-funded, peer-reviewed studies on the human biofield. Welcome back to Avaya, Eileen.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And why don't we just get started learning a little bit more about you and how you got into the work you do today before we dive into PTSD?
Sure. Well, it was PTSD that got me into the work that I do. I was on a path of self-healing. I had a kind of expansive experience with hallucinogenics when I was 18, and it woke me up to the fact that I was really damaged and really dysfunctional and really sick in a lot of different ways. That the way that I had internalized my trauma and turned it into self-abusive behavior. I was bulimic between the ages of 17 and 20. I was hardcore addicted to sugar. For years, for decades, I struggled with a sugar addiction, a food addiction, body image issues, and then all of the sort of dis-ease and discomfort physically that went along with that. Weak digestion, chronic mid-back pain, kind of low-level inflammation throughout my whole body, terrible chronic tension, just a lot of problems. And so I went on a journey to figure out how to heal myself, because I caught a glimpse of how I could be during the psychedelic experience, myself as expanded and as healthy and as whole. It was an incredible experience, not only of like unity consciousness within myself of feeling whole, but actually feeling connected to the world at large, to the cosmos, really for the first time in my life, because our culture and our language creates this illusion of separation, and it leaves us feeling like little particles that are all by ourselves. And we're not. We're actually incredibly expanded, illuminated beings with vast amounts of potential. And unfortunately, trauma knocks off those connections to the world around us, to our community, to nature. And so having this experience of like connectivity and aliveness and expandedness and potential, and then contracting back down, into the product that I was of my environment. And I think that our environment is really traumatic in many, many ways. And, if you think about it, like my mom lived in Belfast during World War II, and they were bombed out of their house twice because Belfast had a big facility where they were making the war machine for Britain. And so, that children are in, your mother, your egg is there. So whatever trauma your mother went through, and even your grandmother, is in you and in your parents. And look at all of the trauma in the last generations, never mind the last 2 years, right? So it's just an ongoing traumatic environment that causes us to do this. And I was very much that, posturally, energetically depressed, sad, withdrawn. I had an outer personality that was pretty functional, but I had a whole part of myself that had just been disassociated from trauma. That when you grow up in an environment that's not safe, you disassociate. That's what so many of us do. It's like if you can't be present there energetically, you're going to actually leave your body. And then your body becomes this strange amorphous mass that you're not connected to. You often end up kind of overweight or just, and that was sort of my thing. I was like, what is this body? I'd be in some kind of class, fitness class, and they'd say, tighten your core. And I was like, what is that? And how do you do that? Because I was so disconnected from my core. There was literally no electrical firing between my body and my brain because I had vacated it years and years before in order to survive. Right? So this is what trauma does, is it takes us out of our bodies. It takes us out of the present moment. It takes us out of our power, because our power is actually like in the present moment when all of us is gathered here. And so that's what I was looking for, that sense of wholeness. So I started just reading. When I was 18, I started reading self-help books, and I'm a pretty voracious reader. So I consume quite a lot of books. I also have that sort of bulimic mentality of like gorging and binging. And so that, I really binged on self-help books. And over the course of a few years of that, I realized two things that were really important. And one was that I'd been programmed by my culture to be sick in the way that I was sick. So young women, 30 years ago and even today were held up two signs. Like one is consume. Go out and shop, buy things, consume. And the other was be skinny.
Yes.
Right. How do you balance this like messages to consume and the availability of food and everything like that with this other really strong message that's like be skinny? And I call myself a bothist. I'm a Libra. And so for me, bulimia was the answer. I can consume and I can be skinny by being bulimic. So that to realize that I'd been programmed. So that was one really important thing. The other thing that I realized was that it was my hand and my mouth. And if I wasn't in control of my own actions, who or what was? Right? So I realized that the only one that could save me was me. Nobody else was going to show up and guide my hand to a more positive, nourishing, supportive action. There was no guru, there was no class, there was no miracle waiting to be found on the road. That I was the miracle, and my ability to step into my own being and make a conscious choice to be healthier was all I had, right? So realizing that, I was able to stop purging. But I was really deep in the grips of sugar addiction. And, I know people talk about heroin and this and that, but I really think sugar addiction is one of the hardest ones to get over because it's just so available and it's not really stigmatized. And we can really use it, to not feel and to not deal. And if you're not letting yourself feel your feelings, you're not dealing with the source of the problem and solving it. Right. So it's an incredible lie, that it's going to like save you or soothe you. But it actually, all drugs really are, they make promises, but really it's ourself is where the gift is and where the magic is and where the power is. So I ended up going to massage therapy school when I was 24. Not because I wanted to be a massage therapist, but because I wanted to become a holistic provider. I wanted to get into the field of holistic health. And I thought about being a naturopath, but I never liked school. Like I was one of those creative kids that just loathed every moment of sitting in a classroom. And so there's just no way that I was going to go to school for that long. So at the time I owned a restaurant, it's a whole other side story, but that I started when I was 20, which really is like an alcoholic starting a bar. I was surrounded by all these incredible baked goods. I was a really good baker. And that really created this whole internal struggle, right? If anybody's been an addict and been in the struggle of addiction, you have this constant battle of like, am I going to have it? Am I not going to have it? What am I going to have? Like, it totally hijacks your life. Like it hijacks your whole being. And so I was really trapped in that struggle and really wanting so much to get out of it. So, I've never stopped. I'm still a voracious reader, continually consuming information. At a point, back in 96, I got hip to vibrational medicine and the idea that we are fundamentally packets of vibrating information, and that solidity is an illusion. It's an artifact of our senses, but really nothing is solid. And the whole idea of if we're vibration, if we're packets of sound and light and information, then treating self with information, with sound, with light, with music, just made a lot of sense. And I read everything I could get my hands on back in the mid-90s about sound healing. And I ended up incorporating different elements of it into my massage practice. So I got every color light bulb in the spectrum, 100-watt light bulb and a gooseneck lamp. I got a surround sound stereo system with a subwoofer under the table, and I got a set of tuning forks for healing that I saw in a catalog. And I had massage clients that were willing to be guinea pigs, and I started to explore treating people vibrationally. And it was really neat. I'd pick out different selections of music. I'd figure out which one of their energy centers is the lowest. I'd put the light on them. I'd do some work with the tuning forks. And I didn't know what I was doing, I was just kind of making it all up as I went along. But I'm an artist and I'm a creative. And so it's comfortable for me to kind of play and improv and kind of be in the moment. I'm also a scientist. So I was able to kind of observe, what happens when I do this and what's the outcome when this happens. And so I did that for a little while, but then I had to move to a new office. The gooseneck lamp broke. I couldn't have the subwoofer under the table anymore. There was no point if I couldn't have the subwoofer. And so my practice reduced to just the tuning forks. And I did this as a hobby for years, actually. So I started with the tuning forks in 96 and did them as a hobby for 10 years. Just seeing a few people a week. I was in the restaurant business and then I was in the specialty food business, and this was just a side gig that was interesting and that, I was doing. But in 2006, I started making discoveries in the area around the body. So in the beginning, I was just working over the body because that's what, why else wouldn't I? And I started discovering that I could use the tuning forks to move around energy that was stuck and balance tones coming out of the body that were out of tune. I'd find areas that sounded flat. And if I just held the fork in those zones where it sounded flat or it sounded sharp or it sounded full of static, that after just a minute or so, sometimes longer, sometimes faster, that all of a sudden it would start to sound harmonious. Right? It would initially, the tuning fork would resonate with whatever distortion was present, and I would hear it, and the person on the table would hear it, and the body would hear it. And what I discovered is this amazing thing that the body is a self-tuning instrument, and when it hears itself out of tune, it auto-tunes. Well, it's such a simple, amazing thing. We're like these acoustic electric instruments that are designed to be in tune, to be in harmony, to be in flow. And it's just you don't know you have a poppy seed in your teeth until you look in the mirror, right? What's the first thing you do? You're like, get it out. The body doesn't necessarily know it's flat or sharp until it gets a reflection of itself. And then it's like, whoa, well, let's fix that. Just like you get a cut and it heals, right? So this is what a tuning fork does. It acts like a mirror and reflects to the body what it's got going on in its vibrational system. And then it acts like a metronome because it's got a steady vibrational input, so the body can tune its rhythm to that, right? Because the body has factory settings for harmony that knows what harmony is. It acts as a pitch signal, because it's the same pitch, so the body can gauge its pitch against it. And then it acts like a magnet, oddly, where if I find these areas in the body's electrical system where there's resistance, and resistance is inflammation. So anytime we have inflammation in the body, which we know is the precursor to disease, there's a jam up in your electrical system. There's too much it's like a traffic jam. And so I found that over these areas in the magnetic field around the body, that you could find these jam ups in the field and actually move them in the field, guide the magnetic field back into center, back into flow. And then the electricity would follow that and come back into a state of flow, ease up the traffic jam, inflammation would go away. Mm-hmm. So I was finding that people were reporting pain going away, anxiety diminishing, depression lifting, all kinds of stuff like that. The kinds of healing that people are really looking for, and certainly that I had been looking for. That You go into any kind of alternative provider, not even an alternative provider, you go to any kind of provider and you're looking for a state change, you're looking for a solution. And this sort of odd practice of waving gene forks around people's bodies was providing those kinds of solutions. So it occurred to me that I kind of had an obligation, sort of like a moral obligation, to bring this to the world, to actually, understand it and teach it. But you know what? Andy, it's a really weird thing. And especially when I started doing it in Connecticut in the 90s, like people were like, oh my God, sound healing with tuning forks, like give me a break. There's something about it that is a little hard to stomach. I don't know why, and that's changed over the years for sure. Like now most people have heard of sound healing, but back then people would be like, sound healing, I've never heard of it. And I'm very logical, I'm very practical, I'm very down to earth, I'm very skeptical, all of these things, and people were kind of seeing me with tuning forks and projecting me as a being that was sort of the opposite of that. And I just didn't want to be seen that way. I didn't even want to be a healer, because I don't really necessarily even consider myself a healer. I'm more of a scientist. In the way that I've looked at this, I've always looked at my practice as research and not as like, oh, these people are coming and I'm healing them. I'm like, yeah, it's cool that you're feeling better, but what's interesting to me is the patterns I'm observing and what's going on and the curiosity about it and the desire to understand it. So I ended up going to college as an adult, and oddly, the college right down the road from me, Northern Vermont University, literally like a 4-minute drive from where I lived in Vermont, had the only wellness and alternative medicine undergraduate program in the country. And they also had a master's in education program. And so I went through that as an adult, and I wrote a master's thesis called Exploring the Effects of Audible Sound on the Human Body and its Biofield. And that became the basis of my first book, Tuning the Human Biofield, which is really full of academic citations. Like I really wanted to take something that had been seen as pseudoscientific and make it legitimate, really ground it in science, in scientific language, and scientific understanding. And so that other people would be able to, in a way it's kind of convert, because I think a lot of people have been programmed to look at energy medicine and this sort of thing as like really woo-woo and kind of not understood. And when we realize that the energy in energy medicine is simply electricity, and like, how does Reiki work? Well, electricity flows from an area of greater concentration to lesser concentration. So Andy, if you're kind of feeling bad and I'm pretty good and able to kind of channel that universal energy, that electricity that's all around me in our electric environment, it is going to flow from my hands to your hand, to your body. Right? This is just basic science that we all already understand. And it's all been obfuscated, I don't know what the word is, so that it seems like it's not rooted in science, and yet it's all very explainable by science. And so that has been my job, is to give language to this whole experience, to make it more accessible to people. And the very basic thing that I found is that sound impacts our electrical system. It helps get the noise and resistance out of our electrical system so that our inner signal, our inner experience of ourselves is calm and quiet and present. And it's really just that simple.
Thank you. Oh, that's so great to learn about your journey and how you got to where you are. And I'm curious, so, you've kind of touched on this over the last few minutes, right? How sound therapy can be effective for things like depression, anxiety, to calm ourselves. Can you talk a little bit deeper as it relates to PTSD, like how it could help someone suffering from the symptoms of PTSD?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been taught to think that our memories live in our brain. And what I discovered was something really completely different. I didn't go looking for this. This was years of observation in a very quiet space, bouncing sound off people like sonar and listening to the ping back. And what I found was, like, if somebody came in and they're like, I'm depressed, that I would find an area off their left shoulder that when I stuck a fork in it, it sounded like, "Bleh." Right? It was tonal. So they're experiencing, like, we put words on things. I'm depressed. I'm sad. Right? But what it is it's an inner tone that or an inner music that we're playing. You're going through your day singing a sad song and just being depressed, right? That's just the tone that's happening, the rhythm that's going on in your body. And when the body hears itself like that, it's like, oh, I don't want to be that way, right? So how is that tone? Like, it's embedded in the standing waves of our electrical system. So just to define our electrical system for a moment, and this is hypothetical, okay? Just so I don't want anyone to think this is like carved in stone. This is a hypothetical model. The torus is a shape in nature that we see. Anything that has an electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it, and it takes the form of a torus, which is essentially a sphere with a spiral channel down the middle. And so we see the human biofield, the human electrical system, as a kind of magnetic bubble that surrounds us that has an outer boundary, like an apple skin, and a core down the middle, kind of like an apple as well. And so energy flows bidirectionally through this. So this is our electrical system, and in the zone between the body and the outer boundary of the field, I discovered standing waves embedded with information. And what I found was that this information was actually memories. It was memories. So if I was working with somebody who was 60 years old and I started to explore the edge of their field, which extends about 6 feet away from us. So the outer boundary of the field, I discovered held the record of gestation. And then just inside that was birth. And then it was kind of like dropping a needle on an album. And as I moved a tuning fork through a person's biofield, it's like reading a vibrational record of their life. So if they had a lot of trauma and sadness around 30 years old, my fork would encounter an area of distortion and resistance about 3 feet away from them, their left shoulder in particular. And we're like, oh, that was when you discovered your husband's cheating, and then you guys went through all this violence, and you had a terrible divorce, and you lost everything, and it's like, it's all recorded in there. So, if you think about it, like everything that we see, that we smell, that we taste, that we hear, that we feel is an electrical impulse in the body. So it would make sense that our memories are stored in our electrical system. And we see a lot of examples of information being stored in standing waves, this idea of magnetic recording of things, information. And so with this work, we can go back in time. We can actually access specific memories, specific experiences. Like, let's say you lived with an alcoholic, abusive dad until you were 10 years old, and you got a lot of trauma from that. Well, that's all encoded in your field, in your memory banks. And we can go in to that specific area and stick a fork in it and sound out to your body, to your whole system, like, wow, there's a great big mess going on over here of dissonance and bad inputs. And so the body will immediately start working with that input to relax deep tension that you're holding, right? Because it's tension that gives rise to inflammation. And trauma causes us to tense up. So what the sound does is it helps to open space. It helps to take those places that are all curled in and start to open them up and start to bring them back online and bring them back into tune. So there's this very profound, very deep subconscious relaxation that happens that then enables you to breathe more freely, to bring more life force into your being. More space. Because if you think about it, it's all this, and it stops us from expanding into our potential. Not only that, but anytime we go through trauma, it's like the part of us that tenses up and goes offline is no longer available to us. And so not only do we go and we find this memory and we relax it and we let the body relax, but we actually can take the energy, the part of you that is frozen there, and guide it back into the central channel, back into flow in the electrical system. It's boost your overall voltage and your potential. Because the more of you that moves from freeze into flow, the stronger you become, the more energy you have to be and to do all that you were meant to be, right? So what I've found with people who have trauma, who've had trauma and people who've had a lot of trauma is that they've managed to make it through their life to this point, basically dragging themselves along, right? And that actually makes you strong. So as soon as we begin to engage this process of making these parts of you that you've been dragging along now back into being part of you, it's kind of like soul retrieval, right? That you become like a superhero because now you've gained all of that strength and not all experience from that trauma, and now you get to start to restore that potential, that electric potential, that flow back into your being. And I've worked with people with many different levels of trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, mental trauma. And it's amazing, like just how, I don't know, it make me kind of want to cry, like just how much can be restored, And I think there are certain traumas like losing children, there's definitely certain things that leave indelible scars, right? Life indelibly impresses us on a particular level. And there are certain pains that we can't erase that maybe we don't want to erase, because sometimes those great big wounds make our heart bigger and softer and more able to kind of hold presence with people who are also going through trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a gift in big trauma in that you can hold space for people. And I can't tell you what a gift that is. I've worked with people who've been through terrible loss and their hearts are so big. Once they're able to kind of heal and function, there's a massive gift there. And so this work helps to restore us, to a certain level of functioning. It certainly doesn't wipe away memories or anything like that, but it gives more of us back to us, which is, which then we can give to the world, to me, that's what healing is all about. The more I become whole and take care of myself, the more energy and availability I have to help other people. And that's where my real joy comes from. And I think many people have that experience, that when you're really useful and you actually help somebody to feel better, like it just feels good to you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. You have me all teary-eyed over here too. I have a hard time not crying if someone else is crying. Do you believe that people can fully recover from PTSD?
Well, here's the thing. In my experience, based on the level of severity that I've worked with, yes. I think it requires a team approach. I think that a combination of body work, of having good conversations about your experience, biofield tuning, and learning how to nourish yourself. That's what, because you have to learn to nourish you. Nobody's going to nourish you. Nobody's going to set your boundaries. Nobody's going to take care of you properly except for you. And if you believe that it's possible for you to heal fully and reclaim all of your potential, and you work tirelessly at that, because it's not a short road, it's a long road, and it takes time. And if you're looking for instant healing, you're going to go round and round in circles because you have to do it step by step. Especially if you had years and years of chronic, constant trauma, it takes a lot of work to back that out of the system. But if you're willing to believe it's possible and you're willing to commit and never give up, yeah. I feel like I have. I wasn't beaten or anything, but I definitely spent the first 18 years of my life curling up in a ball, and became very mentally, physically, and emotionally sick because of it. And I figured out how to unfurl and have fun. And I think that that it is possible. And I think that when you give that gift to yourself, you give that gift to the world around you, and it is an amazing gift to be able to give.
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate those words. Any last insights before we wrap up? Anything else you feel like we've left out that you want to talk about?
Well, I just want to tell everybody, this is something that I say pretty regularly, but I think it's super important. So one of the things that I realized as I was working with clients, when I get them out of sort of noise and stuckness and into harmony and flow, is that I would see that they were great, that they were just great. I'd come home and I'd say to my husband, I had worked in all these people today and they were all great. And after a while, he's like, what, is everybody great? And I was like, yeah, actually everybody's great. Okay, so that was a dawning, but then it took another 10 years of me seeing greatness in other people before it finally dawned on me that I must be great too.
Mm.
Okay? That's how programmed we are to automatically diminish ourselves. That I saw it in all these people for so long, and it took so long to dawn on me, right? So you are great. And you know, and this is the thing, is that every time I've ever reflected back to somebody, I'm like, wow, you're great, and you're great in this way, and you have these gifts, and you're like, listen to how amazing your heart sounds. They'd be like, I knew that, right? So everybody knows that they're great inside, and everybody knows that greatness. And I just want to tell you that believe in it. Believe that it's there and feed it. Because again, you're the only one that can do that. You know, not everybody's going to show up on my table and be like, get confirmation that you're great. Like, I'm going to give you that confirmation right here and right now that you are. And the more that you can accept that, the more you bring greatness into the world, which is what we need. We need your greatness. We need you to believe in your greatness, and we need you to be determined to unearth and to get through and to heal whatever's in the way of you living that, because that's your gift to the world. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about how people could do this kind of work at home. Is this something that people can start applying in their own healing journey on their own, or do they need to be seeing a practitioner of some sort?
Well, there's a lot of different levels you can come in on, right? And depending on where you want to start. So I used to have a one-on-one practice seeing clients, and even though I was in the middle of nowhere and never had a sign, in a poor rural conservative area in northern Vermont, my practice became so busy that I couldn't manage seeing people one-on-one anymore. Because the sound works on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, ancestral, relational, environmental. Like really, your whole being is sound and is impacted by coherent sound inputs. So I ended up starting to create recordings of sessions. And I have a handful of free ones, some really good ones that are anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, recordings of tuning fork sessions that you can listen to, and they're all free. So that's just a place to start if you're curious about it, is to go to biofieldtuning.com or biofieldtuningstore.com and just peruse what's free. And then there's dozens and dozens of other ones, but they're all pretty cheap. They're like $20 to $40, and some of them are 3 1-hour sessions. For example, I've got a series on that's an adrenal reset. And a lot of us who've had trauma, our adrenals are just doing this. They get stuck in that place, and then that becomes your life experience. And this 3 1-hour recordings works with the adrenal rhythm to help to just settle it down and open up space. You know, so that's something that might be helpful for people. We have hundreds of practitioners around the world. So if you want to try a one-on-one session, that could be an option as well. And you can find those at biofieldtuning.com. If you're more heady and you're interested in the sort of philosophy and understanding of the electric body, or if you're a researcher, you can check out my books, Tuning the Human Biofield and Electric Body, Electric Health. If you're more of a video learner, I have a YouTube channel, and there's some free sessions on that as well as just lectures and interviews to start to understand. I mean, what I teach people to do is to think electrically, basically, to start looking at their being through the lens of acoustic and electric energy as opposed to chemical and mechanical. Because it's our tonal and our rhythmic and our voltage aspects that really generate our inner experience. You know, and feeding your electric body is what gives you light and life and radiant health. So really, I'm inviting people to switch the lens that they view life, the universe, and everything through into one that's more empowering, that's more enlightening, literally, and connected. And, you know, learning to just think differently changes your perspective right away on your life. And what I've found is that there's solutions here at this level that I couldn't find in the chemical and mechanical world. But when I started investigating life and working with life, and from this perspective, through this lens of electric health, I've been able to solve problems, and I've been able to help a lot of people to solve problems and to help other people to solve problems. So it's really a whole new paradigm of thought. And yeah, I'm a great rabbit hole to jump into if you haven't done it yet.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we have links below to your free sessions that people can grab, as well as your books and other ways to get in touch with you. So I love it. Thank you so much for doing this, Eileen.
Yeah, you bet, Andy. Thank you for doing it. I think it's really important work, and I'm grateful that you're reaching out and providing resources for people who need it.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Avaya students who are watching or listening right now for being great and amazing. And we're so glad that you're here on this healing journey with us. And we will see you again soon. Take care. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this latest class with Eileen McKusick. She was back with us talking today about sound therapy and recovery from PTSD. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think Eileen does such a beautiful job of, first of all, sharing her story, her amazing story of how she got into the work that she's doing today, the healing work that she's doing, and how she's recovered from her own struggles with trauma and bulimia and all of that. So I thought it was just a beautiful story, a victory over the past for her, and amazing to hear it from her. And I think some of the big take home messages for me were when she talked about, you need to learn to nourish you, right? And no one is going to do it for you. I think this is very important to recognize. If you are watching this right now, chances are you may have had a childhood perhaps that had a lot of trauma and where you were not nourished. So of course you want others to nourish you, right? We all probably want that on some level. But I think what she's talking about is really powerful, is right, really like you're the one you've been waiting for, and recognizing that you have that power. You have the amazing healing power to nourish yourself. You have the amazing healing power to set boundaries for yourself, to learn to recognize your greatness and learn to recognize that you can heal. And I think that's just a really powerful message to end on. So I hope that you found this really helpful for you in your own journey, and we will see you again soon. Take care.
Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and